Awesome. Thank you, guys. Welcome to In the Genes. And speaking of genes, Ankur, those are some incredible things.
I can do it for you too, if you like.
Well, I'm really happy to be here with an awesome entrepreneurial family. We have Naveen Jain, founder of InfoSpace, back in the first .com binge. We hit a $40 billion valuation, and you're going from InfoSpace to space.
Yes.
And Ankur, entrepreneur as well, founder of the Cairo Society, human, and now you're launching a new product, Knock Knock, that we all get a preview of this week, so we're excited. But my question first is, how did you guys get here?
Ankur. Pretty differently, I guess. I mean, why don't you start?
Okay, well, as you can imagine, being an entrepreneur is something that you think about every day, because there are very few things in life that you would do that'll give you more satisfaction, more fulfillment than being an entrepreneur, and everyone in this room knows better than I can ever tell. It is something that is an amazing feeling to come up with an idea that everyone will tell you it's not possible. And that, the more people tell you it's not possible, the more you should be convinced that it is absolutely the right thing to do. So the thing that I've realized is, when you tell people what you do, and if they don't tell you you're crazy, then you're not thinking big enough. So think so big that people think you're crazy. So when I walk up to the room and people ask me, what is it that you are doing? I say, I'm going to be mining the moon. And you know what they tell me? You're fucking crazy. And you say, well, that means I'm thinking the right thing.
So how did you grow up in a household where your dad just wants you to do fucking crazy things?
I wish it was that simple. I mean, so we obviously grew up in pretty different environments, and it's actually pretty interesting to hear how he grew up. But for me, we had this interesting dynamic at home where you would think these things would be fairly straightforward. I want to go, like, for me, my big dream when I was in 7th grade, and you got to understand, Indians are not meant for sports, as you can tell. So in my 7th grade year, I had this big dream of making the junior varsity basketball team. I couldn't jump.
Yeah.
But I read online that if you wear these like specific workout shoes that you trained every day, you'd get a 2-foot vertical.
Those platform shoes?
Those platform vertical. And I was convinced that if I could touch the rim, they would let me make the team.
Yeah.
They cost $100 though, and my dad refused to buy them for me. Refused to waste $100 on this big dream of mine. So that was actually the impetus of my starting my first company when I was 11. So after being told no over and over again, I thought, okay, well, I'll go tell him I'll use my own money, to which his response was, great, you can also pay for your tuition.
Yeah.
Didn't work so well.
Did you make the team?
So what ended up happening, yeah, we started the first company, and I called up the manufacturer of these things when I was 11, didn't know any better. I was like, hi, can I talk to the CEO, please? And convinced them to do an ad deal if they sent me a free pair, and I ended up making the junior varsity team.
There you go.
So what Ankur didn't realize is the brown people can't jump.
Oh, wow.
Almost.
That's a tweet, right? So Naveen, did you instill in your children like this, what do you emphasize in education, in growing up, in values? Like, was it always kind of like did you like live in MBA when you were in middle school kind of thing? Like always business or always entrepreneurship or?
Yeah, so, in all honesty, I grew up very, very poor in India, and most of the time we didn't have a food to eat. So coming from a background which very, very humble backgrounds, where we were moving from village to village, I really had no place to stay, came to United States with $5 in my pocket and wanted to build an amazing dream. And any which way you look at it, God has been amazingly kind to us. So for me, it was good to be hungry and wanted to do the great things. And now raising the children in the affluent family is a much different problem. And so from my perspective, I always let all of our children know, and as good as Ankur is, I can tell you that his sister, who is 3 years younger to him, gives him a run for his money.
Oh,
she is just one amazing girl, right?
But who's the favorite?
So here's the thing. She is my absolutely the favorite daughter because I only have one daughter. Right. But I always told Ankur and all two other children, we have three of us, 3 children, is that our love for you is absolutely unconditional. We'll always be there for you. But our approval is not. You have to earn our approval. You can't expect us to approve of the things you do, but you can always expect that we'll always love you for irrespective of what you do.
Yeah. There you go.
You know, just to give you some more idea about the entrepreneurial side, I remember the story that Ankur obviously is going to disagree with me, but let me share it with you. When he was 10 years old, I was running InfoSpace, and at that time, he's born in 1990, so you're looking at year 2000, the peak of the .com. I am running InfoSpace, companies worth $40 billion, and give or take, you know, I'm way, you know, numbers are way big. And one day I'm just finishing the interview at CNBC and come home, and Ankur comes to me and says, you know what, Dad, one day I'm going to make more money than you have. I could have easily put my arms around his shoulder and say, good luck, son.
Yeah.
I didn't. I actually sat him down and I say, Ankur, I'm so surprised that you think of the success in this way. Success is not about how much money you have in the bank. Success is always about how many people's life can you positively impact. And you know what he said? Whatever, Dad.
Yeah.
But guess what happens? Irrespective of what you hear from, as a parent from your children, I can tell you that they want to make you proud. Even though he said, whatever, Dad, he stayed with him. And when he went to college, he started something called Kairos Society, which became the world's largest nonprofit college entrepreneurship thing. And he called me and said, Dad, I am able to impact millions of entrepreneurs around the world, and that's how I'm going to impact millions of people's lives. Now, that is how I'm going to make you proud. So point was, even though he said whatever, he remembered the lesson. And the only other thing I can tell you is that the one sure way of knowing when you have been successful in life, the day you become humble is the day you become successful. Because if you have iota of arrogance left in you, that you're still trying to prove something to someone else or yourself. So if you're not humble, just remember you're still not successful. Just remember you're no Donald Trump. You don't want to be like him.
I mean, so what's interesting is when you grow up in a household like we did, it's the most valuable thing I think you find is that you're exposed firsthand to everything, the ups, the downs, the whole cycle of what it takes to be an entrepreneur, to build a company, and the struggles, right? I mean, especially now, there's such a glamorous, like, media angle to what it's like to be an entrepreneur. It's like you watch Shark Tank, they start with like private jets and cars. Most of those entrepreneurs on Shark Tank can't even afford that, probably, right? But what it really...
it's cool now. Back then, it wasn't.
But it wasn't cool, right? And it's hard work, and it's that grueling environment where you have to see it firsthand. And a lot of people here are now going through that struggle as well. And to actually watch, I mean, when I was 6 is when you started InfoSpace, and I remember being at home because you and Mom had put our life savings into starting this company.
Amazing, yeah.
Right? And that's a huge risk that a lot of people here deal with. And you know, one of the things that I find, and for those of you who go on to have kids, it's like, a lot of parents try to shield their kids from work versus family. And I think that's a huge injustice to people growing up. Because getting an opportunity from a young age to see firsthand what it takes to be successful, the hard work that goes into it, changes everything. And when I got to college and I was looking to start my first real company, I remember you called and you were saying, I said, hey, I'm starting this idea, I want to start a company. His first response was, focus on school, don't make money, no for-profits allowed, period.
So you wanted education first, not business.
So my natural response was to start a nonprofit in the business of creating for-profits.
So you found a good loophole. Growing up in that household, like, did you feel pressured to start something yourself? Like, there's obviously a ton of advantage for the experience and kind of the access, but there's got to be a downside too, or is it?
No, so there was, like I said, there was no expectation into any particular industry we were going into. In fact, the only reason I stumbled into entrepreneurship is probably because I was getting told no so often at home that the only way to get around it was to figure things out myself.
No, I think, in some sense, as a parent, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time because I think most of you are probably just old enough to be our kids. So I'm going to just give you a little bit more parental advice, and some of you who are parents can probably follow through and maybe look at your own children. One of the things really is when you look at your children and you and say, should you allow them to follow their passion? And there is a great story that me and our daughter, a conversation with her. And I think a lot of you can read that. I wrote that on the Forbes magazine and also on the Inc. magazine. It's called An Entrepreneur versus His Eye-Rolling Teenage Daughter. And it's really, just to give you a recap, a very short recap, she came to me when she was 16-year-old and said, Dad, I found my true passion. I know exactly what I want to do, and I know you love science and technology, I want nothing to do with it, so just get used to it. I told her, I said, doll, you're not letting Dad do his job. And she said, what's Dad's job? And I said, Dad's job is really simple. Expose you to enough things before you make up your mind, because you don't know what you don't know, and it's too early for you to have a passion. And she looks at me, she said, so what is it that you would like me to do? And I said, well, what I would like you to do is to spend 4 weeks going to Singularity University, learning about neuroscience, learning about genetics, learning about artificial intelligence, learning about nanotechnology. And if you go there with an open mind, wanting to learn and wanting to like, when you come back, you can tell me exactly what you want to do, and I'll support you. And she looks at me and she rolled her eyes and said, Dad, you don't hear a word I say. I have no interest in that. And I said, doll, if you go there with an open mind, we can always solve this problem. She decided, she said, if you promise me that you will let me decide what I want, I will go. She went there for 4 weeks, and she came back, and the first thing when she opened the door, she said, Dad, I've made up my mind. And my first words were, oh, shit. She said, Dad, I've decided I'm going to either be a neuroscientist or geneticist. I took a deep breath, and I said, at the risk of you changing your mind, would you tell me what happened? And said, Dad, you're so dumb. You don't realize I'm in high school, and I go to the classes, I look at the physics, and look at the chemistry, and look at all the science. I'm saying, why do I care? It makes no difference in my life or anyone's life. When I went to Singularity University, I realized I care a lot about girls' education. And I realized if I don't know how the brain works, how could I change education? And I know I care a lot about the girls' health. If I don't know about genetics, how am I going to change their health? So I suddenly realized the science and technology is not a destination. It's a means to an end. It is a tool in my tool chest to do the things that I care about. Imagine that. So if you are allowing your kids to have their passion too early, imagine if I had done that, the world would have lost out on a great scientist, and she would have never found her true passion.
No. If Ankur just wanted to get a, quote, normal job, which is great, out of school, would you support that, or do you always want him to kind of break out in his own and try to like take moonshots, literally?
Answer is that everyone in life should be dreaming big and never be afraid to fail. As an entrepreneur, you never ever fail. The only day you fail is the day you give up. Everything else is just a pivot.
So there's a bunch of things that you pick up, right, hanging out with people like him. But and some of them good, some of them bad. But one of the things that you've said, I think, that shaped a lot of the philosophy of how we look at, and my team looks at building companies both at Kairos and Human, was this idea that a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is the most risky endeavor you can go down, right? And it is hard. But it's also the only career where you're actually in charge of your own destiny. Yeah. Right? Every other job, you're at the mercy of somebody else. And similarly, everyone always thinks that innovation, this breakthrough technology, is a result of being smarter than everybody else, about being more creative than everybody else, about, as they say, thinking outside the box, right? And I think one of the things we used to talk about when I was younger was that innovation isn't about thinking outside the box. In fact, a lot of the great technologies we use today were just about thinking about the same problem from a different box. Right? And suddenly the logistics problem that these industries like taxis have been trying to solve is simplified by a bunch of tech nerds in Silicon Valley that becomes a massive company. Or the health industry, right? Or even the education space. We saw some pitches this morning of people disrupting that space through non-traditional means. And so that idea of suddenly thinking that your greatest asset growing up is in fact the naivety of not knowing what should and shouldn't work, but being able to apply that to solve some of the biggest problems early on is a lot of what drove me to starting the companies, but also what led to the formation of Kairos, which, I mean, you've been involved in this, Steve, but over the last 6 years, we've launched 300 companies coming out of Kairos, right? And I think one story defines this better than any other one that we've worked on, but we had a team come together to work with Johnson & Johnson. And Johnson & Johnson had a challenge for us. They said, how do we solve the oral healthcare problem? right? So many people in the world suffer from gum disease, tooth decay, et cetera. We own these tooth-based lines. How do we solve this problem? And so what they did is they defined the exact issue and then handed it to a group of students who had never worked in the oral hygiene space. And the first question these students asked wasn't, how do we tackle this type of bacteria? How do we build a better toothbrush? It was, why the toothbrush? And while that may seem obvious, it turns out that the answer is we've been using toothbrushes since ancient Egypt, when we had a literally wooden stick with bristles that you would use to clean your teeth out the middle. And over 2,000 years, we've innovated so incrementally that we now have an ultrasonic toothbrush that is the exact same thing, but vibrates by itself. Right? And what they found was, over the course of that question, which led to the discovery of a new liquid solution, think of it like Listerine, that targets the exact bacteria that causes the majority of gum disease, which is now going through stage 3 FDA trials, and when it gets approved, we'll be able to actually treat oral health problems better than brushing your teeth twice a day just by swishing your mouth for 30 seconds, right? And so when you think about where this great opportunity for innovation lies, I think the greatest lesson that I learned growing up was that, again, being young, being inexperienced can be your greatest asset if you're taking on problems big enough to matter.
Well, Ankur, I mean, just so proud of you, what you're doing with your new company in the Knock Knock. I mean, you're changing the way people are going to communicate. And I am changing the way what people are going to talk about. So, you know, we're talking about taking a literal moonshot. And the reason I decided to mine the moon was every single time
people don't even know this.
Started a company was saying, you know, we're going to go to the moon. And one day I woke up and said, you know what, let's just stop the damn thing. Let's just go to the moon, right? So it's literal moonshot. So I was going to have you talk about, if I am writing the conversation, what people are going to talk about, how are they going to communicate?
So I mean, obviously different stages, right? So it seems that the new retired tech dream is to go to space, and we're actually going to be going to space together next year, which will be pretty fun. But he's actually sending rockets to the moon next year to mine the moon for platinum, which you have to tell everybody about. Closer to Earth, as we work on our technology problems, we're in the process at Human right now of launching a new product where we're hoping to basically bring more context to the conversation around us, right? And so the thought was, what if you could walk into any room, just knock twice on your phone, and instantly get the context of who's around you and who you know in common, to have that context of, oh, these people are actually closer to me than I realized, and connect that group instantly.
So how many people here downloaded Knock Knock? So go to the App Store and download Knock Knock. And when you do, you will know everyone who is around you, what they do, and you can walk up to them, and you will know who you know in common. So you can say, hey, you know David, like David and I were talking about this. So everybody should go there and download Knock Knock right now, and you will know who you have in common with me or him or anyone around you.
Yeah. So you see, sales is very important. Sales is a very important trait in an entrepreneurial family as well. Never miss an opportunity. But
you should tell people real quick for this last second about.
Yeah, we have like 1 minute.
Yeah. But I mean, it sounds crazy and far-fetched, but literally for the first time ever, a private company is going to be landing on the moon and bringing back moon rocks, most of which is actually platinum, to Earth next year.
More than that, Ankur. So to think about it, going to the moon, it is a big dream, but it is a very possible dream. And when we make that happen, we become the 4th superpower to ever being on another planet. Only 3 superpowers have ever landed on the moon. And it's not a UK, it's not France, it's not Germany. It will be us becoming a 4th superpower. And people always say, when I say, we're going to the moon, how much stuff are you going to bring back? What are you going to do? And they forget just the fact we land on the moon, that is a big deal. To us, going to the moon is that ambition. It's a 4-minute-a-mile problem. Once we land on the moon, you know nothing is impossible. You can do anything you want. And even if you just bring the moon rocks back, imagine just the value of moon rocks. See, diamonds are not even rare on Earth. It's made rare by De Beers. And people give each other a diamond when they are in love. What if you change the paradigm and say, everyone gives someone a diamond. If you love her enough, you will give her the moon. And every girl is going to say, I'm not going to marry you just for diamond. If you love me, give me the moon, right? And when you actually go take someone to the moon, when we have people can go to the moon, we're going to change the definition of honeymoon. It's going to be taking your honey to the moon. It's not going to be honey Hawaii. It's going to be honeymoon.
There we go.
I think we'll end on that.
Yeah, we'll end on that. So, yeah, next year, Jain family trip's going to the moon. So that's.
So we will
that's
make
pretty
that
good.
happen, and every one of you welcome to come join us at the moon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Good to see you.